I'm Mara Quinn. I'm 34. And I'll never forget the moment my own mother leaned in at my brother's wedding and whispered, "Please don't make this about you." I hadn't said a word. I hadn't done anything but show up in the same dusty blue dress she picked for all the bridesmaids, even though I wasn't in the wedding party. I was there as a guest, a sibling, a daughter. And yet somehow just my presence felt like a threat to her. That's when it hit me. To them, I've always been the problem. My whole life, I've been the difficult one, the sensitive kid, the art freak in a family of high achievers who measure success in titles and tax brackets. My parents, Mitchell and Linda, were both engineers. Practical, efficient, obsessed with long-term planning. My older brother, Luke, golden child, varsity everything, top of his class. Got into Stanford Law with a full ride and somehow still managed to make it look effortless. And me? I was the one who painted murals on my bedroom walls and cried too hard at animated movies. I was the kid who spent recess sketching instead of socializing. I didn't get in trouble, didn't rebel. I just didn't fit. And in our house, not fitting meant you were failing. By the time I was 15, I knew better than to share anything I was proud of. The few times I tried, I got the same tight-lipped smile from my mom, the same half-hearted, "That's nice, honey," before she launched into an update about Luke's internship with a senator, or how he'd just been nominated for some award I couldn't pronounce. Even when I got into a selective arts high school, her first reaction was, "Is that even accredited?" It wasn't just the silence, it was the subtle stuff. Like how my paintings never made it to the fridge, but Luke's debate trophies had their own glass case. Or how, when I was accepted to a liberal arts college, my dad asked if I'd considered community college instead, just in case this whole art thing doesn't pan out. I paid my own way through school. Scholarships, student loans, working weekends at a coffee shop where I also taught kids' classes in watercolor and printmaking. Meanwhile, my brother's law degree was fully funded. No one even blinked. And when I graduated, they didn't come. Said it wasn't convenient timing. The thing is, I wasn't angry back then. Just tired. Tired of trying to be seen. Tired of trying to explain why art mattered to me. Why I believed in it. How it kept me sane. I thought if I just worked hard enough, kept my head down, eventually they'd notice. Eventually, I'd earn my way into their version of success. But it never came. Instead, I got pity. Backhanded concern disguised as support. Like when my mom introduced me at a family friend's dinner party with, "Mara's teaching art at a middle school for now, but she's very talented." For now, like it was temporary, like it wasn't a real career. What they didn't know, what they never cared enough to ask, is that while I was teaching those kids, I was building something else. Nights and weekends, I poured everything I had into creating a space where art didn't have to justify itself. Where kids, especially the weird, quiet ones like I'd been, could feel like they belonged. But none of that mattered to them. Not until the wedding. Luke's wedding was held at this restored warehouse gallery in Seattle. Gorgeous place. Exposed brick, vaulted ceilings, wall-length windows. Expensive. So, of course, it made sense they'd pick it. What they didn't know was that the gallery, it was mine. Technically, under a different business name. But I bought it 2 years ago. Renovated the whole thing. Managed it quietly. Kept my name out of the press. And when my mom told me, so casually, that Luke's fiancé had picked some trendy art venue downtown, I almost laughed out loud. They were renting my space. Using my lighting. Toasting their picture-perfect sun beneath the skylights I paid to have installed. And yet somehow, I was the one being told not to make a scene. I didn't plan to say anything. I honestly didn't. I thought I could let the night go by, stay in the background, maybe even leave early. But then came the toast. Luke stood up, glass raised high, and said, "I just want to thank my incredible parents for always believing in me. And my little sister Mara for proving that you can still follow your dreams, even if it's just teaching finger painting." The whole room laughed. I didn't. That was the moment something in me snapped, Not in rage, but in absolute clarity. They'd written a whole story about me without asking who I really was. And now? They were standing on my stage. I quietly stepped out of the spotlight that night. But I wasn't done. And I wasn't staying silent much longer. I didn't sleep much after the wedding. I kept replaying Luke's toast in my head. The smirk, the cheap laugh, the way the room had eaten it up like it was harmless banter. And my mom? She clapped. Like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. Like that one line didn't land straight in my chest and stay there. I didn't cry, though. Not that night. Instead, I poured a glass of Cabernet, walked barefoot through the back corridor of the gallery, and stood dead center under the skylight. The same spot where they'd just cut their wedding cake hours earlier. And I looked up at the beams I'd chosen, the ones I argued with contractors about for weeks. I touched the textured concrete I had polished myself when we were short on budget during renovation year 1. This space wasn't just beautiful, it was mine. And they had celebrated without even seeing it. Correction. They had used it without even knowing it belonged to me. That was when something shifted. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even hurt anymore. It was this quiet decision, like someone flipping a switch in my brain. I was done hiding. And I wasn't waiting for them to give me permission to be proud of what I'd built. The next morning, I called Naomi, my manager, friend, and the only person who'd known from the start that the Lumen Gallery was mine. Guess who toasted to finger painting under my lighting rig? I said. She paused. You let them go through with it? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, I thought I could just swallow it, pretend it didn't matter. But I was wrong. Naomi knew me too well to ask if I was okay. She just waited. I think I want to take ownership public, I said finally. Maybe not splashy, but real. There was a beat of silence. Then, about damn time. It wasn't like I'd been hiding out of shame. I'd kept things quiet for protection, emotional mostly. I didn't want my work to be judged through the filter of my family's expectations. I wanted it to stand on its own. And it had. Over the past 7 years, I'd gone from a second-year middle school art teacher juggling side gigs to owning and operating 4 community art centers across Washington. The Lumen was my 5th. It had been a derelict paper mill when I found it. Cracked windows. Moldavian, the roof leaked. But I saw the bones, the history, the potential. I always did, even when no one else could. I scraped together a down payment with a few silent investors. People who knew my work but agreed to stay off paperwork so I could build the brand anonymously. I didn't want it to be about who my family was. I didn't want anyone to assume I'd been handed a damn thing. I spent 2 years restoring the Lumen, taught workshops in the upstairs loft, rented the main space for small exhibits and eventually corporate events. That's how Luke and his fiancée found it, through a third-party event planner. No idea whose name was behind the LLC. And I let it happen. I let them rent from me because back then I still thought they might see it for what it was. And maybe, just maybe, see me for what I'd become. But they didn't. And now? Now I wasn't building in secret anymore. I met with my lawyer, updated ownership filings to reflect my name directly. I published a small article on our site about the origin of the Lumen, my personal vision for combining community, art, and restoration. I added my bio to the staff page. No announcement, no press release, just presence. A few weeks later, I was asked to speak at an education summit about integrating arts programming into public schools. My mom saw the flyer online. She texted me, "I didn't know you were speaking at conferences now. Sounds fancy." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "It's not new, just finally visible." She didn't respond, but Luke did. 3 days later, he emailed. One line. "Did you really own the gallery?" I didn't reply right away. I waited until I was sitting in the same chair I'd occupied during his wedding, the one near the back, facing the makeshift stage, and then I typed, "I've owned it for 2 years. You toasted your big night in the place I built from the ground up. Congrats again, by the way. He didn't respond either, but I know he read it. That was the beginning. Not of revenge, not exactly, but of taking up space in a way they couldn't ignore anymore. The first time I saw Mom again after the wedding was in the parking lot behind a Kroger. I wish I was kidding. I had just finished loading canvases into my Subaru from a weekend workshop when I heard someone call my name in that sharp tone only a mother can master. Equal parts demand and disapproval. Mara. A word she was standing there like she'd been waiting, arms crossed, still in church heels on a Sunday afternoon, looking wildly out of place next to my dented hatchback. I didn't even have time to react before she walked up like we were about to have a board meeting. You need to explain what that little stunt was at the wedding, she said, not even a hello. I blinked. You mean existing or owning the venue? She didn't laugh. Of course not. You knew that was Luke's day. You didn't need to make some big reveal and humiliate the family. I looked at her. This woman who raised me, fed me, paid for Luke's SAT tutors, but couldn't name a single piece of art I'd made. And I felt this tiredness rise up from my ribs, like a sigh I'd been holding for 3 decades. I didn't make anything into a stunt, Mom, I said quietly. I let you use the space I built. You just didn't bother asking who built it. She flinched at that, just barely. Then regrouped. You should have told us. You let us look like fools. No, I said. You did that yourselves. There's a special kind of silence that happens when a daughter stops trying to earn her mother's approval. It's not angry. It's not cold. It's just done. She stood there for a minute, searching my face for something familiar. I don't think she found it. I want to move past this, she said finally in that clipped tone she uses when she's pretending to compromise but actually issuing a directive. But if you're going to be part of this family, you need to stop acting like a stranger. That landed. I laughed. It wasn't loud. Just enough to taste the bitterness on my tongue. A stranger? I echoed. Mom, I spent years trying to be seen. I invited you to my senior showcase. You said Luke had a law mixer. I emailed you pictures when I opened my first studio. You said the file wouldn't load. I sent you the brochure for the Lumen the day we launched, and you never even replied. Her jaw tightened. I kept going. And now that it's finally public, suddenly I'm the one keeping secrets? That's rich. She didn't say anything, just gave me the look. That familiar blend of shame, irritation, and maternal authority that used to shrink me. But not anymore. You don't have to like who I became, I told her, but you do have to stop pretending I don't exist when it's inconvenient. She turned without another word and walked to her car. I watched her drive off, not angry, not even sad. Just clear. That night, Luke called. I didn't answer the first 2 times. On the third, I picked up, out of curiosity more than anything. I didn't mean anything by the toast, he said immediately, without even saying hi. It was a joke. I didn't respond. Just let the silence sit there. I didn't even know you owned the gallery, he added. Exactly, I said. You never asked. He paused. Look, I didn't come here to fight. I don't get it, Mara. You act like we abandoned you. You didn't have to abandon me, I said calmly. You just had to keep seeing me as less. Another pause, then, okay. So what do you want now? It was a genuine question, but it hit me sideways. Because the truth was, I didn't want anything from him anymore. Not really. I want to stop needing you to understand me, I said, and I meant it. A beat. Then he laughed, low and not unkind. Well, that's brutally honest. Yeah, I said. Try it sometime. We ended the call civilly, not warm, not cold, just neutral. And honestly, that was a win. The next few weeks were quieter. Naomi and I launched a new art mentorship program with 3 local high schools. We brought in kids from underserved areas, gave them access to real supplies, real instruction, real space. Watching them come alive in those rooms made everything else feel smaller by comparison. But it wasn't over. I knew that. 2 weeks later, I got an invitation, a formal one. Cream cardstock, raised gold lettering. Mitchell and Linda Quinn request the pleasure of your company for a family dinner and announcement. At their house. The house I hadn't set foot in for over a year. I stared at it for a long time. They wanted me back. Or maybe they just wanted to save face. Either way, the dynamic was shifting. And for once, I wasn't the one doing the chasing. I poured a glass of wine, set the card on my kitchen counter, and stared at the RSVP line. Yes or no? I wasn't sure yet. But for the first time, I knew that whatever I chose, I'd be walking in as myself. I ended up RSVPing yes. I don't even know why, exactly. Part of me was curious. Part of me wanted to prove to myself that I could walk into that house. The same house where my voice was always the softest in the room, and not shrink. I arrived 10 minutes early. Old habits die hard. The front yard looked exactly the same. Same overwatered grass, same ceramic frog statue by the mailbox, same motion light that flickered on even though the sun was still out. I stood on the porch for a second, breathing in the scent of lemon pledge and that weird brand of manufactured calm you only get in houses where no one talks about real feelings. Then I knocked. Dad answered. "Mara," he said, like he wasn't expecting it to be me, even though the RSVP had my name on it in clear print. He stepped aside awkwardly. "Come on in." The living room was arranged like a showroom. Perfectly fluffed couch pillows, coffee table centerpiece from some catalog. Luke and his wife were already there, sitting stiffly on the couch like they'd been summoned to a job interview. Mom stood by the fireplace holding a folder. Not a drink, not an appetizer. A folder, like this was about to be a performance review. "Hi," I said, scanning the room. No one answered right away. "Thank you for coming," Mom said eventually. Not warm, not cold. Just formal. "Sure." We all sat. Or they sat. I hovered for a second before choosing the armchair I used to call dibs on as a kid. Some part of me wanted that tiny, meaningless win. "So," Dad cleared his throat. "Your mother and I wanted to talk about the wedding, and the venue, and some other things. Here we go. We realize now that we may not have acknowledged your accomplishments properly," Mom added, like she was reading it off an internal cue card. We were surprised. That's all. "Surprised that I was capable?" I asked. Not snarky, just direct. She blinked. "That's not what I meant." "Okay." The silence stretched. Luke's wife shifted awkwardly, and for a second I almost felt bad she'd married into this circus. Almost. "We've been talking," Dad said, jumping in like he was trying to save the moment. "About how we can be more supportive. Maybe attend one of your exhibits, or, what was it, the high school program?" I nodded slowly. "The mentorship program, yeah. That'd be a start." Mom chimed back in. "We also thought it might be helpful to clarify some family matters, just to avoid miscommunication in the future." And that's when she opened the folder. Inside, printed summaries, articles about me, a photo from my keynote, a screenshot of the Lumen's business license with my name on it, highlighted. My jaw actually dropped a little. "You printed these out?" She looked almost embarrassed. "We didn't know. We had to look it up." Luke let out a breathy half-laugh. I told her it was overkill. I stared at the folder, at the documentation of my own life being presented back to me like it was evidence in a trial, like they were trying to prove to themselves that I was real, that I'd actually done it. It was weirdly validating, and also deeply sad. "You don't have to audit my life," I said gently. "You could have just asked." My mom pressed her lips together. "We're trying. We really are. This is new for us." It hit me then. Not pity, but perspective. They weren't used to me showing up with power, with confidence. For so long, I'd let them write the script and I'd just played the side character. the one who made unconventional choices and didn't need much. Now I was rewriting it, and they didn't know their lines anymore. I appreciate the effort, I said finally. Really? But I need you to know something. They both looked up. I'm not here because I want your validation. I'm here because I'm tired of hiding to keep everyone else comfortable. I've built something I'm proud of. I'm not asking for applause. I'm asking for space. And respect. Silence. Then Dad nodded. Fair enough. Mom looked like she was still catching up. Luke, to my surprise, added, It's probably about time we updated the family narrative anyway. I half smiled. You think? After that, things loosened. A little. We ate dinner, talked about neutral topics. Luke asked how the mentorship program was going. Dad offered to connect me with someone on a city grant board. Mom didn't say much, but she listened. And that was new. Later that night, back at my apartment, I opened a bottle of wine and sat by the window with my sketch pad. I didn't draw much these days, not for clients anyway, but I felt the itch to make something again. Not out of hurt, out of wholeness. The revenge, it turns out, wasn't in making them feel small. It was in taking up space fully, without apology. The real test came 2 months later, during a citywide arts fundraiser held at the Lumen. It wasn't supposed to be a big family affair. I hadn't even invited them, honestly. But the mayor's office was involved, and somehow my mom ended up volunteering with the planning committee. Classic Linda Quinn move. If there's a room full of influential people, she will absolutely find her way in. I didn't think much of it until the night of the event, when I stepped out onto the mezzanine in a deep green jumpsuit, my version of armor, and spotted her across the room, standing next to a reporter from the Seattle Times. And I heard it. She was saying, Mara's always been creative. We knew early on she'd do something special. It just took a little longer to blossom. I stopped mid-step. That syrupy tone, that well-rehearsed line, I'd heard versions of it my whole life, always delivered after the fact, when there was something to gain from association. Only this time, I didn't just let it slide. I made my way over, calm but steady. The reporter noticed me first, smiled wide. You must be Mara, she said. Your mother's been telling me all about your work here. Has she? I said, locking eyes with my mother. Mom's smile didn't budge, but her eyes tightened. I'd love to clarify something, I told the reporter, casually reaching for a glass of champagne from a passing tray. My parents didn't come to my first gallery opening, or my second, or my third. They didn't fund my education, didn't ask about the business until after it became profitable. But now that there's press involved, here they are. The woman blinked. I see. Mom looked like she'd been slapped without warning. I smiled politely. You're welcome to quote me on that. Then I walked away. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud, but it was real. And it was mine. And my mother? She left 20 minutes later. No goodbye. No fanfare. Just vanished into the night, the way people sometimes do when the story they've been telling about themselves doesn't hold up anymore. That moment didn't erase everything. It didn't heal the years of being invisible or dismissed. But it did something better. It closed the loop. Later that night, when the fundraiser was over and the last guest had stepped into a waiting Uber, I stood alone in the main hall, lights dimmed, echoes of laughter and clinking glasses still hanging in the air. Luke texted. Just one word. Damn. I laughed. He got it. We'd talked a few times since that dinner at my parents' place. Nothing deep. Nothing forced. But there was something new in his tone. Less big brother, more peer. And that was enough. I don't think my mother and I will ever be close. Maybe we were never meant to be. But at least now there's no pretending. She knows who I am. She knows what I've built. And most importantly, she knows I don't need her to say she's proud in order to keep standing. That's the kind of revenge no one can dress up or spin. It just is. A truth that takes up space without apology. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that being underestimated is painful. But trying to mold yourself into someone else's version of worthy is even worse. Real closure doesn't always come from reconciliation. Sometimes it comes from reclaiming your own narrative, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. And if you've ever been in that spot, the quiet one, the overlooked one, the family's afterthought, I'd love to hear your story too. Drop it in the comments. Tell me how you took your power back. And if this story found something real in you, I hope you'll stick around for more. I'm not done telling the truth yet.